The state of Kuwait has always been an exceptional model for active partnerships with the United Nations ever since joining the UN on the 14th of May 1963 as it works to maintain peace, humanitarian support, and development. Kuwait has positioned itself globally and regionally as a key player in political assistance, peace building, and development fields. Kuwait is also preparing the ground internally to transform the economy, society, business models, infrastructure, and social services within its new Kuwait Vision 2035, which will also help to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Goals. The United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution on the 31st of May 2018 to redesign the United Nations Development System to support the achievement on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This requires a new approach to strategic partnership at the national level with government leaders and partnerships with stakeholders, through which the UN can work with all players to support national development aspirations and plans and contribute to the 7 pillars of the new Kuwait Vision 2035, Agenda 2030, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The first strategic cooperation framework between the state of Kuwait and the UN is a result of extensive discussions with the government of Kuwait, the private sector, civil society, and academic institutions. The framework aims to collaborate with Kuwaiti stakeholders to ensure that the priorities of Agenda 2030 are included in the objectives of the National Programme for Development and the Sustainable Development Goals achieved through ensuring the inclusion and equality in Kuwait's march towards fulfilling regional and international aspirations. Since its admission to the United Nations, the state of Kuwait has been pursuing a peaceful and balanced policy in its relations with other countries, based on the principles and objectives of the United Nations Charter. Kuwait proceeds from its firm conviction and belief in the importance of not resorting to the use or threat of force to settle disputes, but rather resorting to dialogue to foster the values of tolerance and coexistence between the different cultures and religions. Kuwait maintains diplomatic and friendly relations with different countries and peoples around the world. These relations are based on the principles of mutual respect, non-interference in the internal affairs of other states, respecting sovereignty and common interests, as well as supporting various international mechanisms to further economic, social, cultural, and intellectual cooperation between states and peoples. The policy of the state of Kuwait is respected by the international community and regional organizations. This was clearly shown in 1990 when the whole world stood by and supported Kuwait during the invasion, and the Security Council adopted historic resolutions that reinforced the legitimacy, credibility, authority, and ability of the Security Council to maintain international peace and security while confronting serious violations of the UN Charter and international law. Furthermore, the concept of collective security was best demonstrated during the operation to liberate the state of Kuwait. Whether traditional or emerging, global challenges, risks, and threats facing the international community cannot be confronted by an individual country or a group of countries alone. These challenges necessitate uniting the efforts of all member states, rich and poor, big and small, working under the umbrella of the UN, the only international mechanism that enjoys neutrality, independence, credibility, and legitimacy. Security and development are closely linked, as neither can be achieved without the presence of the other, and both cannot be accomplished together without respect for human rights and the rule of law. Providing guidance to direct international programs and policies, develop appropriate plans, and strengthen the capabilities of the developing countries is vital to enable them to meet their developmental and security needs based on their own national priorities, while also addressing the various global challenges. Kuwait's relations with international organizations started well before it gained its political independence in 1961 through its participation and membership in a number of key international organizations such as the World Health Organization, International Labour Organization, and the Universal Postal Union. After attaining membership to the UN in 1963, the state of Kuwait participated effectively in the various activities and meetings of the organization and its agencies. It supported the right of peoples in all its forms. The state of Kuwait also joined the movement of non-aligned countries during a crucial period in which numerous countries in Asia and Africa gained their political independence and attained membership to the United Nations. The state of Kuwait was active in seeking membership in various key United Nations institutions and committees, such as the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, and the Human Rights Council, as well as membership in a large number of international committees where it's positively contributed to the activities of these institutions, supported all the goals that were aimed at promoting cooperation and coordination of international efforts. The strong relations that Kuwait has with the UN was evident in 2009 when the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon inaugurated the United Nations House that includes the offices and representations of a number of specialized UN agencies and other international organizations. These organizations enjoy all the facilities and logistical support that Kuwait provides, with a view to enable the organizations to perform their functions and carry out their responsibilities in a safe and appropriate environment. Within the framework of Kuwait's support and backing to the UN activities in the field of maintaining international peace and security, Kuwait also hosts the headquarters and offices of several international political missions in the region. The state of Kuwait continues to be committed to fulfilling all its financial obligations towards the regular budget of the UN and the budgets of peacekeeping operations. Kuwait also supports the efforts to reform and enhance the performance of various UN bodies and to promote the principle of accountability in order to make them more effective, efficient, and transparent in carrying out their responsibilities and increase their capability to confront global challenges. Kuwait's humanitarian role is one of the main pillars of Kuwaiti diplomacy, stemming from its belief in the importance of supporting the peoples and countries that are in need as a consequence of natural or man-made disasters such as wars and armed conflicts. Kuwait is strengthening its international and regional partnerships at the humanitarian level through its continued support to a large number of organizations and international agencies specializing in the provision of humanitarian aid, foremost among which is the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The tremendous humanitarian efforts exerted by the state of Kuwait and its humanitarian positions at the global level resulted in the state being awarded many humanitarian achievements, most notably the United Nations honoring of His Highness the late Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Al-Jabr Sabah as a humanitarian leader and designating the state of Kuwait as an international humanitarian center. Kuwait's humanitarian contributions in 2025 spanned across Yemen, Syria, Gaza, Sudan, and beyond, providing food, medical aid, housing, and educational support to thousands affected by conflict and displacement. Kuwait has also rolled out sweeping reforms for its charitable sector in 2025. New regulations aim to tighten oversight, improve transparency, and align nonprofits with international standards against money laundering. At the start of 2025, the Kuwait Residential Village was opened in southern Taiz, Yemen, featuring 40 housing units and supporting facilities founded by the Abdullah Nouri Charitable Association. Shortly after, the association inaugurated by Abdulaziz Houd al-Babtain School in Shabwa Governorate, enhancing access to education in eastern Yemen. Last year saw an unprecedented scale of emergency relief logistics through organized air bridges. Kuwait maintained a continuous relief air bridge to Syria, dispatching more than 30 flights between January and February alone, carrying food, medical supplies, winter aid, and mobility equipment. The Kuwait Red Crescent Society and other charitable associations also sent convoys and established mobile clinics to serve refugees and vulnerable communities. Syria received the highest documented volume of aid by weight, totaling at least 935 tons. In Gaza, relief efforts intensified through the Kuwait Beside You campaign, which raised over 6 million Kuwaiti dinars over 3 days in August. Palestine was supported with at least 740 tons of aid, in addition to several large truck convoys. An air bridge that operated from August through October delivered 380 tons of food and basic necessities via 18 flights landing in Egypt and Jordan. Furthermore, a land convoy of 15 trucks delivered 360 tons of food and relief materials through the Karam Abu Salim crossing in mid-October. Other major shipments included 2 separate convoys of 33 trucks each in late October. Sudan and Yemen also received significant aid shipments. Sudan was sent a total of 90 tons of aid across 3 relief flights, 2 flights carrying 40 tons each in March and July, followed by a 10-ton shipment of shelter and relief materials in August. Yemen received at least 40 tons of medical and relief supplies in late November specifically to address a cholera outbreak, while other aid was provided to these countries such as dental clinics, water wells, and residential units. Medical support is a central pillar of Kuwait's humanitarian strategy. The Kuwait Red Crescent Society secured accreditation from the U.S. Institute for Health and Safety to train volunteers in first aid. Field clinics were established in Sudan and Darfur to aid displaced communities, and mobile dental clinics were sent to Yemen. Kuwait's humanitarian work in 2025 also featured strategic international partnerships with major global organizations to address specialized needs. Kuwaiti charities signed a series of agreements with the World Food Programme to support mothers and infants in Gaza, providing hot meals and nutritional supplements, with donations valued at $1 million. Additionally, the Kuwait Red Crescent Society secured a $2 million grant for the International Committee of the Red Cross to sustain healthcare in Sudan. The Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development and the UN Development Programme signed in 2021 a partnership agreement to scale up support for countries and communities affected by crisis and seeking to build resilience in the context of growing humanitarian and development challenges. The agreement enables the two institutions to jointly reinforce the resilience of partner countries worldwide and contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The agreement will enable the Kuwait Fund and UNDP to provide strategic and critical support as the world seeks to build forward and achieve the SDGs by 2030. The agreement, signed before a virtual meeting between Abdul Wahab al-Badr, Director General of the Kuwait Fund, and Achim Steiner, Administrator of UNDP, enables support for sustainable livelihoods, peace building, crisis prevention and recovery, and post-crisis stabilization. The partnership also sets out a framework for the Kuwait Fund to provide financial support for UNDP's work in support of the 170 countries around the world in which UNDP operates. UNDP programs worldwide are focused on tackling poverty, inequality, and climate change and helping countries build integrated, resilient, and lasting solutions. The partnership builds on joint work between the Kuwait Fund and UNDP in situations of fragility, including a partnership through the Islamic Development Bank and jointly with the government of Japan, which enabled the construction and operation of the Khan Yunis wastewater treatment plant, boosting public health and access to water for over 217,000 people in the Gaza Strip. The agreement also signals an extension of Kuwait's global leadership role at the humanitarian and development level, as Kuwait has been consolidating a position as a contributor to efforts to boost resilience in the context of the world's most pressing crises. The state of Kuwait has long pursued a balanced, fair, and ambitious foreign policy with openness with the international community. Kuwait's initiatives are aimed at achieving international peace and security while attaining the principles of shared relations with various countries around the world. As the initial step on the diplomatic front, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was established in August of 1961 with an Emiri decree. Some of the main principles of the state of Kuwait's foreign policy include respecting the sovereignty of other nations, maintaining good neighborly relations, and calling for peaceful solutions to international disputes through dialogue. The state of Kuwait's foreign policy in the region as a whole, as one of its main goals, is protecting the interests of the Gulf, Arab, and Islamic nations, as well as supporting the global efforts to achieve international peace and security. Since its independence and the adoption of its constitution in 1962, the state of Kuwait has been keen on promoting and protecting human rights. Kuwait has worked continuously to adopt many legislations, laws, and measures that reflect the extent of its respect for international humanitarian rights obligations, as well as its establishment of national mechanisms that contribute to the implementation of these legislations and laws. The state of Kuwait also paid great attention to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the UN in September of 2015, which are based on the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and human rights treaties and charters. Kuwait was a member of the Human Rights Council for the period from 2011 to 2014, which confirms its desire to contribute to strengthening and supporting the role of the Human Rights Council based on the belief in the role of this council in ensuring and entrusting human rights, in addition to contributing with the participation of the international community to achieving international peace and security. Kuwait is also keen to continue the efforts of the international community in the field of human rights on the basis of objectivity and avoiding discrimination and politicization when dealing with human rights issues, but rather with emphasis on the respect for the rule of law. The state of Kuwait has entered into a number of international conventions and treaties related to human rights, which include the Convention on Children's Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The state of Kuwait's devotion to respecting its obligations towards these international conventions and its full belief in the values and rules that these conventions carry contribute and assist in devoting human rights to the state parties joined in these agreements. The Permanent National Committee on International Human Rights Law has been established to prepare reports and follow up on relevant recommendations for human rights under the chairmanship of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and includes all government agencies as it undertakes the task of preparing all reports related to human rights mechanisms and following up on the final observations and recommendations issued by them. The state of Kuwait pursues a balanced and reasonable policy towards issues on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council, and it strives to invest in its close relations with state members of the UN, particularly countries of the Middle East region, with the aim of strengthening the security and stability of the region in line with the principles and objectives of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. Kuwait aims on representing all the political and regional groups to which it belongs, conveying their concerns and expressing their aspirations in a manner that would contribute to achieving security and stability regionally and globally. Kuwait follows up with the implementation of Security Council resolutions related to conflicts in the region and contributes to the efforts of taking the necessary steps to put them in practice. Kuwait works on promoting the role of the Security Council in conflict prevention by investing the capabilities of the UN in the field of preventative diplomacy, as well as dealing with all crises that threaten international peace and security in an orderly, prompt, and efficient manner. Kuwait supports and encourages mediation efforts to solve conflicts by peaceful means and assists in building national and regional capabilities with a view to achieving peace, stability, and development in areas prone to outbreaks of conflict. Activating the role of the Security Council is vital to enhance ways and methods of work by bringing more transparency and clarity in its working methods to become more effective in facing the accelerated challenges the international community faces. The state of Kuwait promotes and coordinates international response to humanitarian crises, including natural disasters and disasters resulting from wars and conflicts, such as issues involving refugees and internally displaced people, while also protecting civilian populations in conflict zones. The fields of peacekeeping and peace building are high on Kuwait's agenda, and the country continues to support the UN efforts in these fields, as well as promoting measures that bring more transparency to the work of the United Nations, while reiterating the importance of exerting further efforts aimed at building the capacities of states in post-conflict periods. The state of Kuwait was elected to the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member through an election in the UN General Assembly on July 2, 2017. The state of Kuwait obtained a total of 188 votes out of 193 for the period of 2018 to 2019 non-permanent membership seat, marking the second time the state of Kuwait has served in the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member since 1978. Since obtaining the non-permanent membership seat, the state of Kuwait has been selected to lead two committees in the UN Security Council, the first of which is the Committee on Resolution 1533 of 2004, which focuses on monitoring an arms embargo imposed on all foreign and Congolese forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the second is alongside the Kingdom of Sweden in 2018 and the Kingdom of Belgium and the Federal Republic of Germany in 2019 as the main figures on the Syrian humanitarian issue. The state of Kuwait held the UNSC presidency in February of 2018, which proved to be a crucial month in relation to the humanitarian crisis in Syria. Under the leadership of the state of Kuwait, the UN Security Council developed 12 outcomes containing 5 resolutions, 4 public statements, and 3 public announcements. Kuwait held the UNSC presidency again on June 2019, which resulted in 13 products containing 8 resolutions, 1 presidential statement, and 4 press statements. The state of Kuwait's presidency of the UN Security Council was widely commended by fellow members in the Security Council for its level of transparency, coordination, excellent management, especially in relation to the adoption of Resolution 2401 that resulted in a ceasefire in Syria. The state of Kuwait also presented Resolution 2474, which gained unanimous adoption by the UNSC as it focuses on the protection of civilians and missing persons in armed conflicts, the first such resolution on this issue. The state of Kuwait had a significant role during its non-permanent membership in the UNSC in several key issues, which are the Syrian humanitarian crisis, the Palestinian issue, as well as the crisis in Yemen and Myanmar. On Syria, the state of Kuwait during its first tenure succeeded in leading UNSC efforts in adopting 2 resolutions in relation to the Syrian humanitarian crisis. The first resolution is 2401, which was adopted unanimously on February 24, 2018, which demands the halt of hostilities to enable the delivery of humanitarian aid, while the second resolution is 2449 that authorized cross-border aid deliveries into Syria. On September 19, 2019, Kuwait, alongside Belgium and Germany, produced a resolution aiming for an immediate stop to hostilities in the governorate of Idlib and requiring all parties to adhere to international humanitarian laws. The state of Kuwait's efforts concerning the Palestinian cause has always been firm in support of the Palestinian people, and during Kuwait's presidency of the UNSC, Kuwait had an impact on the situation in the Palestinian occupied territories. Kuwait drafted a resolution aiming to provide international protection for the Palestinian people, while also leading efforts that resulted in the adoption of a letter directed to the UN Secretary General, which asked for more reports in regard to condemning the policy of Israeli occupation forces of Palestinian lands. During a Security Council session on the Palestinian cause, Kuwait reiterated its commitment to defending the rights of the Palestinian people, adding that Kuwait sticks to the international Muslim and Arab stance in affirming that the Palestinian cause is a central issue to the Arab nation. The state of Kuwait also engages in the international efforts to find a political solution to the crisis in Yemen. Kuwait hosted the negotiations between the two Yemeni parties for a total of 100 days in 2016. Kuwait has continued this role through its 2018 UNSC membership in seeking a political solution. Kuwait had a vital role in the negotiations preceding the adoption of Resolution 2451, which aims to reinforce the Stockholm peace talks. More recently, the state of Kuwait reiterated its steadfast commitment to protecting the rights and upholding the dignity of migrant workers, underscoring a proactive national approach to labor migration management. Speaking before the International Migration Review Forum 2026 at the UN headquarters, Second Secretary of Kuwait's permanent mission to the UN, Wafiq al-Mullah, detailed a list of legislative and executive measures enacted to bolster worker protections. These include the strict prohibition of forced labor, the criminalization of withholding migrant documents, and the implementation of transparent protocols for resolving labor grievances in a manner that preserves their human dignity. The forum, convened from May 5th to the 8th, serves as the primary global platform for member states to assess progress on the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. Al-Mullah emphasized that Kuwait has adopted a holistic strategy to combat human trafficking. This framework is anchored in the criminalization of all forms of exploitation, the enforcement of a robust national referral mechanism, and the treatment of victims as individuals entitled to full protection under international human rights standards. Furthermore, she highlighted a comprehensive overhaul of Kuwait's legislative landscape. This includes modernized statutes governing anti-trafficking efforts, domestic worker protections, and foreign residency regulations. Central to these reforms is the National Strategy 2025 to 2028 to combat trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants, which aims to enhance governance and the efficacy of protective measures. The diplomat noted that Kuwait's balanced migration policy aligns labor market requirements with human rights obligations, consistent with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and Kuwait Vision 2035. To foster a decent work environment, the state is standardizing contractual relationships, adopting ethical recruitment practices, and refining labor inspection systems in collaboration with international organizations. Al-Mullah also underscored the state's commitment to providing essential social safety nets, including universal healthcare, legal aid, and specialized shelters for workers in distress. On the technological front, she announced that Kuwait has transitioned to an integrated digital labor management system. This infrastructure supports evidence-based policymaking while enhancing transparency and administrative efficiency. Al-Mullah noted that Kuwait has submitted its second voluntary national review, a testament to the country's ongoing evolution in migrant management. She further cited the strengthening of bilateral partnerships to regulate recruitment alongside a humanitarian shift that views detention as a last resort, prioritizing humane alternatives. The Second Secretary concluded by affirming Kuwait's resolve to continue working alongside the international community to ensure migration remains safe, orderly, and humane. The partnership and cooperation between the State of Kuwait and the United Nations has a strong and historic bond that will continue to prosper. Kuwait will continue to push its strong diplomatic policies and stance towards many regional and global issues in order to achieve everlasting peace and prosperity in every part of the world. As a center for humanitarian work, Kuwait will make sure that those that are suffering will not be left behind, as the country continues its pioneering humanitarian work under the wise directives of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Mash'al Ahmed Al-Jabr Al-Sabah. May Allah bless and protect him. Whether as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council or participating in the UN General Assembly, Kuwait will continue to be a strong player in the field of international diplomacy.
Kuwait has taken great strides in the field of postal services, a sector that mirrors the nation's wider journey of growth and modernization. The history of mail in Kuwait is one of persistence, adaptation, and vision. It began humbly in 1775, long before the era of modern communication, when correspondence was carried through the efforts of Kuwaitis themselves. At that time, there were no official offices or recognized systems. Instead, people relied on the arrival of merchant ships that docked in Kuwait from time to time. This reliance on merchant vessels continued for generations until a turning point arrived in the early 20th century. On January 21, 1915, during the era of the late Sheikh Mubarak al-Sabah, Kuwait witnessed the opening of its very first post office. For the first time, postal services were organized and official. Though they were still supervised by the Indian Postal Service, reflecting Kuwait's ties to the wider British administration in the Gulf region. This step signaled a new beginning. Kuwait was preparing to enter a modern world where communication was vital for trade, governance, and personal life. The system continued to evolve. In 1941, supervision of postal services was transferred to the British company, Imperial Wireless and Cable, known for its role in telegraph and radio communications. This arrangement lasted only briefly, for by October of the same year, responsibility was once again handed back to the Indian administration. The frequent changes in management reflected the turbulence of the Second World War era, when communication lines were of strategic importance not only to Kuwait but also to the global powers engaged in conflict. Another milestone came in February 1958 when the government of Kuwait itself assumed responsibility for postal services within the country. This was a decisive step toward independence and self-reliance. The government immediately set about modernizing the system. The main post office was opened in Safat Square, at the heart of Kuwait City, symbolizing the central role of communication in the nation's life. To mark this moment, Kuwait issued its very first postage stamps, proudly carrying the image of the late Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah. These stamps were more than tools of communication. They were emblems of national identity, bearing the face of a leader who would later guide Kuwait into independence. Progress did not stop there. On February 1, 1959, the government extended its responsibility to include external postal services. By the early 1970s, post offices had spread throughout Kuwait. The number eventually reached 51 offices, covering every major district and serving a wide base of citizens and residents. No community was left untouched. Every neighborhood had a post office ready to provide essential services. These offices became familiar landmarks, places where people gathered not only to send letters but also to feel connected to the world.